Director of Non-Traditional Degree Programs, of which the University Without Walls is one. And we're here this morning to review the work, the progress toward degree, hopefully the degree completion of Mr. Strickland. Now, I suggest that we go around and introduce ourselves one by one, and then our committee chairperson, Lance Williams, will take over the proceedings.
We're going to start. Dr. Worrill, want to introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, I'm Conrad Worrill.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Henry English, President of Black and Lattice Fund.
Kim Sanborn, Non-Traditional Degrees.
Lance Williams, I'm the Assistant Director here at the Carruthers Center for Inner City Studies and faculty member as well.
Shelley, Bannister, faculty member of Justice Studies and Women's Studies.
Emmett Bryant, former DePaul Blue Demon and member of the National Basketball Retired Players Association.
Dennis Boston, Senior Vice President, retired from Johnson Publishing Company.
William Bowling, Professor Emeritus, College of Health Professions at Governor State University.
John Lucas, Community Advisor, head basketball coach from 4th grade all the way to professional player development, evaluation and coaching certifications.
Oh, I'm Worrill. I'm a graduate of the UWW program with the help and advice from the faculty and staff here at the Carruthers Center for Inner City Studies, including Dr. Worrill.
Raj Strickland, student and hopeful graduate.
Okay, so as we follow the procedure here, we're going to ask the Director of the Non-Traditional Degree Programs or representative to clarify the purposes and basis. Have you done that already, Kim?
I feel I have.
Okay, cool. So that's done. Faculty person other than the student's advisor is to select it as the review board chairperson, and I think that is me. I was asked to chair the meeting, so I will chair the meeting. I want to welcome everyone, and we can get started. The first thing that we want to do is we're going to ask Mr. Strickland to just give, and just so we have an overview of what's going to happen. So we're going to ask Rod to give just introductory remarks, anything that you're comfortable with. And then we're going to follow that with some remarks from Dr. Worrill, who is the academic advisor. He's going to make some comments regarding Rod's program. We're going to follow that with Coach Lucas is going to make some remarks as Mr. Strickland's community advisor. He's going to comment a little on the program. From there, we're going to ask Mr. English, the outside evaluator, to make a couple of comments. And then from there, we're going to ask Mr. Strickland to kind of give us an overview of the process. This is his oral examination that's going to take place to determine the ability for him to formulate theoretical considerations and the ability to apply theory to practice. And then once he completes that oral examination, presentation, so to speak, then he can conclude with whatever remarks he wants to make. And then from there, we're going to ask him to leave the room for a brief period of time. We'll have an executive session to determine his graduation status. We'll ask him to come back in, and we will present our recommendation to him. Then we will sign off on everything, and that will be it. Okay? So at this point, we're going to ask Mr. Strickland to make introductory remarks regarding his program.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm humbled and honored to be here, and I thank everybody for coming and joining me today in this process. It's been a long journey. It's been 7+ years that I've been in this process, and it's been tough. It's been rough, but you know, I got through it, and I think I've grown immensely as a person, and it was just so beneficial to me. Just a little background, I went to DePaul University from 1985 to 88, and then from there, well, my performance in the classroom wasn't exactly, you know, a great performance like maybe I was on the basketball court. And from there, luckily, I was a good enough athlete to become a professional basketball player. And from there, I played 17 years in the NBA, played for 16 coaches and 9 teams. And through that whole process, as my career was winding down, I began to realize that at some point in time I got to figure something out. You know, I have to do something else. And you know, I've been in basketball all my life since I'm 7, 6, 7, 8 years old. So quite naturally, I wanted to stay in basketball. So I thought about coaching in a college or pros, or even a front office position in the pros. And luckily for myself, through friendships and relationships, I was able to go to University of Memphis with John Calipari and coach under his basketball staff. And I retired in 2005, and I also became a member of John Calipari's coaching staff 2005. And during that period, I realized to become what I wanted to become in college, and that's a head coach, I had to get my degree. So in 2007, I took it a little more serious and decided to go back to school and take some classes. And that's when, talking through some family and friends, I finally met up with Dr. Conrad, and we talked about it, and we've gone through this journey, and you know, Dr. Conrad's been great, been tough, but he's been great. And through the whole process of college basketball, I think I've learned, you know, I'm in the sports leadership, and I think I've learned so much through the process, dealing with young athletes, dealing with personalities, dealing with leadership, dealing with school officials. I think I've grown and matured and have a great understanding of what that's all about. But I finally realized, like I said, that at some point in time I had to get my degree. So I became a little more serious and a little more dedicated, and you know, I'm here today, and I'm looking forward to keep improving and moving on. You know, my goal is to one day become a head coach, and having a degree is real important when dealing with the young athletes and kids who are aspiring to become, you know, athletes or professions. So as a leader, I had to, you know, have to be ready to get a degree and be ready to deal with that. So again, I just want to thank everybody for being here, you know, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Dr. Worrill?
I'm not quite sure how all this happened, but you know, Ron Strickland was a name brand in Chicago as he attempted to infiltrate our city and play basketball at DePaul, as he's from the East Coast. So we began to hear of this guy named Strickland, and we discovered in the basketball world that he was, you know, a pretty good ball player. So who would have ever thought that years later, observing him in his NBA career and all of the many teams he played for and the reputation he had for being a great ball player or attitude, that who would have ever thought he would end up coming to Northeastern Illinois University, Carruthers Center, working with me. But Strickland didn't know that I thought I was a ball player at one time, in my mind. We struck up a pretty good rapport. And academics and athletics has been something that I've been connected to since my YMCA days, when I was a little boy playing in the Wabash Y against that man over there, Mr. Boleyn, who thought he could play. I recognized a lot of potential in Ron, and we started, and I don't know if Rod had totally internalized the world of the academy and what it really means in its development. But the last 2 years, something happened to Ron. I don't know what happened, but he became a real serious student. And he's not joking about comparing his performance on the court with his performance in the classroom in his early years. But his performance in the academic world in the last 2 years has been at a high level. He finally got it. and I think he has great potential. And people would call me, various basketball programs, and ask me, when is Mr. Strickland gonna get his degree? We wanna hire him. But that degree part was always in the way. The last opportunity he had was at Memphis, where he had been an assistant coach at Kyle Perry. So I think Rod is prepared, he's been studying, he understands the dynamics of sports leadership as an area that he concentrated on, and I'll be quiet.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Worrill. I'm going to ask Coach Lucas to make some comments.
First of all, I'm honored to be here. I do this a lot. And John Lucas Enterprises has served as a gateway for young coaches. It's always served as a mentorship for developing young kids in the game of basketball. Having said that, Rod and I have been friends as ball players, but I take education very seriously. And so when he talked to me about being a part of this for him, my father is the president of the university. My mother, before she passed, was a high school principal. My father has a school named after him in North Carolina. He was one of the first integrators of schools. He is a director, the oldest at 93 years old, member of the NEA, oldest active board member. And I just got him back from Atlanta down there at the board conventions. And I have to do his paperwork so he can get reimbursed. That reimbursement for them trips is real important to him. So I say all of that to say that when I was approached by Dr. Worrill about this, this wasn't going to be a rubber stamp for mine. This is a 3-year journey. We've put 15 coaches into coaching in the Division I. And one of the reasons with so many other great coaches, many players here, a lot of times we get opportunities, and one, we don't have an education, which is a very mixed message. A very mixed message. And two, when we get the opportunity, we're not working at the opportunity, we're taking a handout. So regardless of color, I'm trying to get rid of those guys because you're dealing with our future, our kids. So in saying that, Rod has really, really developed in the 4 areas of coaching. And for me, these are the 4 things that I look at. Counseling. How does he work and counsel with young kids? Although in his workshops, he had his own kids there, he was able to work with 4th, 5th, and 6th graders and help them develop their skill. And if you work with young kids, they're very impressionable. And so he dealt with his own kids in that environment with the same. So that told me that he knew how to give a counseling and mentorship not only to his kids, but everybody else, because the way he treated them would show an impact on how he treated the rest of the kids. So he was very good in his mentoring with other kids at the 4th, 5th, 6th grade. Then when he moved to the high school level, he was more on court as he was with the professional level. And he never discussed his professional career with the younger kids, because I always would remind them that they didn't know who he was. But as he went to the older kids, his reputation of 17 years, they were more familiar. He was able to show them with on-court things and things to be prepared for the future. And he was very good in that. And then the last issue of the mentorship was he always mentored parents as to what to expect in coming up through grassroots basketball. The second phase of coaching that for me is very important was counseling. Rod's had a lot of trials and tribulations in his journey to his degree, and there's no better teacher than to talk from experience. That's one reason I listen to Dr. Worrill all the time, because he's sharing experience. And I believe in experience, strength, and hope. So from that area of counseling, he was able to counsel because he's talking about places he's been. And that that's a quality teacher when you can talk about your past, where you've been, and where you're going, and what you're doing. People rather see a sermon than hear one. And in this day and age, he's been able to do that from a counselor, and then to be a parent also with kids in the same environment. And be able to sit there when they're cussing your kid and still maintain your balance, that's really good also. So I wanted to see him in that leadership role. The third thing, which was his A+ area, was education. Teaching them how to play the game of basketball. He's one of the best. In fact, I retired the last time I played against him. He actually put me out the league. I made me realize how old I was. But as far as knowledge, footwork, really teaching the game of basketball instead of, you know, in our profession, there are a lot of people who work at FedEx who teach basketball. They know just enough not to know enough. But when somebody's done it for 17 years, they don't realize that they've been in the video room because he played the point guard position, that he's already had several other coaches who has taught him his philosophy, his style of play, how to handle, how to manage. And so from an educational standpoint, with having so many different coaches, was very important. And then even the most important part of the education is he's a father. He's father of 4 kids. And if that's not coaching, and staying with your family through all the trials and tribulations of sports in this day and time, then that says a lot for him as an education on the world. The last phase of this is of coaching for me is positive confrontation. How do I confront somebody to make them get better without losing them? That has been his toughest area, that he's had to work the hardest is in that area, because each kid is different. And so he had to coach me understand where people were coming from, what environment, where there were single-family homes, where there were 2 parents there, where there was a father, where there wasn't a father, where the kid's dad is incarcerated, what are the other issues? So how do I confront him to get him to get better? And how do I help him move forward that basketball is a tool, not the end result? And to use the game of basketball rather than let it use you. And so in saying that with the confrontation, whenever he led our groups in the gym, get your degree was most important. And for him and for me to be here today that was the piece, that was the disconnect for him. You've got all this knowledge, but you haven't completed the piece. And being in education, my father made me get my master's. And I got it back in '80. And it still didn't avoid any of the other complications of life. But whenever I wanted to start a program, as I told Rod, the one thing they said that they couldn't take from me was my degree. So I didn't have to give my program to you, or anybody else, because I was qualified to be there. And hopefully in this process, he has completed everything here, because it wasn't a 6-month journey. We've had this going on for 3 years. So as far as coaching, he's way ahead of the coaching curve. He's just missing one of the pieces that should have been done when he went to school before he left early to get his degree. And I think the biggest piece that he will sell is why a degree is so important, because it either catches you at the front end or it catches you at the back end. But if you ain't the best, it's going to catch you. And even if you are the best, it will catch you then. So I think that that's what his knowledge and what he can share, and even more importantly, how he got his degree here is really big, because you can do it several different ways, and in sport are sometimes brainwashed that you can only do it a certain way. And with the young lady there with Title IX, with women, and the way sports are always changing, it isn't how you get it, it's whether you have it and whether you have the knowledge to share that. So those are the 4 components that I think he has done so well at with me. Sorry that I took so much time.
Thank you so much. Mr. English?
My goodness. You know, I've gone through and I've reviewed the record. You know, I always believe at being an athlete also, integral part of that is being a student. And one thing, as I go through your record and look at it, certainly you excel in those areas. The other thing is never too late. You know, I like the fact that you know, being an ex-Marine, one thing to teach you coming from an art school, you observe, and then you make your adjustments, and then you overcome it. You know, that's the motto in the Marine Corps. And when I look at your record, you certainly have excelled in coaching. The other thing is the fact when I look at your record, I also see that you spend a lot of time with young people and teaching them. And having that degree is very important because that's part of being an athlete. And you've excelled in that area. When I look at the basic stuff and the course of offerings that you've had, the basic requirements that are being met, you know, getting a degree would mean that you master in a certain area. And so, and when I look at your background, I see that in that you definitely demonstrate that you have mastered the area of leadership and coaching. And sitting here, you know, I feel proud of the fact that, you know, that you understand, you got it, and you understand that what it takes to get through this process, and it wasn't a sprint, it was a long distance run. And a lot of our kids has to, and as a coach, you're gonna be in a position to demonstrate and tell the story. And it really, oftentimes it's about telling the story to young people. And taking your story and taking their story and making an adjustment so that sometimes when they're off path, they get on the right path. I don't forget that when the president was in, and you know, some of those questions come in, they came into Hyde Park High School, because we felt that he needed to talk to young, especially young black men, around the issue that they have value, and the whole issue around them having value. And what made me understand that he understood, because he went and he told his story, and he listened to their story, and out of that there came out one story. And so when I review what you've done here and your experiences, certainly you have not only have a story to tell, but you have skills that you can pass on. And that as you pass those skills on, that you make that next generation even better. So I'll stop right there. And I say that I'm proud to sit here, and I feel proud of you. Okay?
Thank you, Henry. Okay, so at this point, Mr. Strickland, we are going to ask you to just give us an overview of your depth area, which focuses sports leadership, and just kind of talk us through, you know, what your experience has been, and then when we finish that, then we'll just ask you to wrap up with concluding remarks.
Okay.
So you can begin.
Yes, well, I mean, just because I'm in basketball and I'm with young kids all the time, you know, my experience has been as a mentor, you know, helping kids get through the process. You know, college basketball, kids come from high school, a lot of them are a little jaded, a little spoiled, and a lot of times, you know, for me, you know, I have to help them along and help them to understand the balance of, you know, being a star athlete, but also being responsible and, you know, also being dedicated to the game. Just in general, making them realize, you know, how important it is to be a good person and to carry themselves the right way. Little stumped here, but little nerves here.
Yeah. And let me just interject. I think I may have made a mistake here, and I could get some clarifications. As I'm reading this, it says oral examination. We probably were supposed to ask just a few questions or something like that. Is that right? How come?
That's
no one
okay.
told me.
It's okay.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm sorry, Dr. Worrill. This reminds me so much of the this is the PhD level
It's like
kind of, which is
this kind of-
high level, you know, stuff, and no one is expected to just sit up and talk for whatever period. Generally, what happens is the committee will ask a few questions, kind of like, and then you respond to the questions as opposed to you having to just like talk out of the blue. So can I revise the approach? Is it okay if I do that?
Yeah,
You're the chair.
Okay.
yeah, Lucas threw us off. He took us to the distance of height. That's what happened. But I didn't want to say that.
Yeah, no, okay. So I think you kind of answered my question already by, you know, when I said just give us an overview. So I think you've done that successfully. Are there any from the committee? I'll ask if you have any other questions or comments.
Right, Brian, you know, a lot of times assistant coaches who work in high-level Division I basketball programs and who are assistants and work with high-level renowned historical coaches like Calipari, probably the highest paid basketball coach in the world, and has a knack for creating these great basketball programs from Massachusetts to Memphis to Kentucky. But in your role, you mentored 3 of the top point guards in the NBA right now: Derrick Rose, Tyreek Evans, and John Wall. And a lot of people don't know that you hone their skills as point guards, and they were one and done, every one of them, first round picks, multi-millionaires now. And so can you talk about your role as assistant coach and how all that played into influencing these young men?
Yeah, well, that was going kind of what I was saying earlier. I think for those guys, it was just a matter of me getting them to understand how important it was to take direction. You know, a lot of times kids come from, you know, from high school and being spoiled, and you know, a lot of times they're dealing with adults that they kind of think are on the same level. So when they come to college, sometimes they don't understand that they're dealing with adults. And so I think a lot for them, I had to make them understand that and teach them how to deal with adults and how you act and how you treat them. And then it had a lot to do with working hard, being in the gym, dedicating themselves to a routine, to hard work. And then also the biggest part too was helping them to understand the head coach. Because a lot of times the head coach is the rough, hard one. And sometimes these kids, like I said, being spoiled, have a hard time kind of, you know, getting used to that. So a lot of times the head coach is on you real hard, and as an assistant and a mentor, most of the time I'm trying to explain to the kids why he's like that, and why it benefits you, and why if you stick to this, you'll eventually reach the goal that you want to attain. And a lot of people think it's a lot about getting on the court and drilling them and putting them through drills and making them sweat and work hard, and that's a big key to it. But a lot of times it's up here in their head. And like I said, they come in immature, and you gotta help them mature. You gotta help them see what it's really about, and what the real world is about. You know, everybody doesn't cater to you. And it's a process. They come in spoiled, and it's a hard way in the beginning, but as the year goes on, they kind of get it, they learn, And then once they realize that you're sincere and you care about them, and you know, like we stated before, just my previous reputation as a basketball player and the things that I've been through, I'm able to kind of get through to them, because like I said, I'm authentic. You know, I've been through it all. So I think that's for the most part, that's what I go through with those athletes.
May I ask you?
Sure.
First off, I want to say I'm very impressed with the materials you put together. You're a
Thank
good
you.
writer, and that was so refreshing. One of ours, you're a good writer, it's wonderful. So, about that, what you just commented on, I want to just comment on some of the things you've said. Because what you're saying about students coming in and being full of themselves for one reason or another, and I take it these are high school young men generally who were so good in high school that they think they're really great and they need to learn that they're part of a team and that sort of thing. I find that to be true of all the young people who come through Northeastern, that they come in not necessarily feeling like they're that powerful, but realizing, oh, there's more I can learn, and these are the adults that I can learn it from, right, and be open to that. So it's a great, reading your materials helps me see teaching in a different way, because I'm not the sports leadership, I'm not so much me, but teaching, yes, and it seems like coaching is like teaching.
Yeah.
Right, so it's been really interesting for me to get to know you through this material. One of my favorite lines, and I don't have a page number to give you, but you talk about, it's at the beginning of your description of depth theory and sports leadership, the last line on the page. We learned that by listening to them, they will tell us what we need to know. And I just was writing about my own teaching yesterday, and I wrote something really similar. That we think we know what we're doing, but really we have to listen to them to see what they need to know, and that we can figure out how to take them there. It's so cool, so I appreciate that very much.
And being an assistant coach, I'm afforded that opportunity because I don't have to be the tough, rough guy all the time. So a lot of times I can sit there and listen to their problems, you know, on or off the court, and I'm able to relate and be able to talk to them, and they're comfortable, and you know, it usually helps. And we had a seminar, all the coaches, actually George Raveling was one of the top, well, he's an all-time coach in college basketball, and we had a seminar with him, and he actually, we sat down and we talked about stuff like that, and he kind of tried to let us know how important it was that we listen to the players, that we understand that, yeah, we're the leaders, we're running the show, but they have a voice, and it's always good if you incorporate them, you know, to make the team, you know, as successful as possible.
Sure.
So I want to talk about your breadth, because we talked about depth. I just want to note that I think you've done a nice job, and one of the things in the program is depth and then breadth of learning. Because a typical college degree, you have to take all the general educations and stuff like that. And unfortunately, you did a lot of that at DePaul, which was good. But these other skills, you're talking about the counseling and all, while they're part of sports leadership, they're also part of sort of a breadth of knowledge, right? Understanding this concept of listening to people from their different points of view. Your natural sciences are, as you listed them, a little like basketball. So you can include that as one of your natural sciences, just as we're, you know, refining this material for your degree. Okay. I have a bunch of them.
Go ahead. Any other questions, comments
Well,
from the committee?
one of the things that I've discovered is in the world of, you know, NBA is a lot of money. And you can't help but get into economics and the opportunities for entrepreneurial involvement. And so, Rod, I would like for you to pull out your smartphone and pass around for us to see something that's not necessarily connected, but it's an outgrowth of your entrepreneurial activity and education, because Rod has created a sneaker for little kids that's educational, that may take off around the world. And he showed it to me, and I was outdone, because the kids can learn how to write on the shoe and count on the shoe, and hopefully it will also be in Spanish, so that children who play basketball in Spanish-speaking countries can use it. One of the applications, this is something that demonstrates the creativity of a culmination of a basketball player who's trying to connect it to education and entrepreneurship. So, you know, I think this is.
It's all in between.
So we'll pray that he gets this shoe licensed by the NBA. Then we can all ask him to give us some money. But anyway, I didn't mean to say that. I'm sorry.
You did say that out loud.
By the way, this is Mr. Ledger, who came in late, who played basketball at Carver High School back in the 50s, early 50s.
Yeah, and I'd like to apologize for coming late. Abe Booker, who was an outstanding basketball player here in Chicago, he had his sister's funeral, and so I went to get this over there first.
Well, Ryder's working, he's also the chairman of a group of ex-basketball players who call themselves the Slow Breakers, and who meet every Tuesday and talk about what they used to do. However, it's a great fellowship of athletes in general, with Mr. Brandon and Mr. Boston. It's a great fellowship of athletes, and he's the head of it. So it represents the history of Chicago basketball from the 40s, 50s, right on up to where we are now.
From your earlier comment, I didn't know you could be an ex-basketball player. I thought you were always playing it in your head.
You are.
Well, it's very pass around, but you gotta scroll it to the left.
Scroll it to the left.
I have a,
Go to the left, this is the shoe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I'll explain a little bit.
Okay.
Well, I'll explain after everybody
Oh, okay.
takes a look at it, but it's, you can see it.
Conrad,
And
he had a comment, you know,
I'm sorry?
he had a comment.
Who had a comment?
I
John,
have
yes.
a question.
Question.
that's the box, and at the bottom it says learning is fun.
Nice. Great idea. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Did you see it? And those are dry erase, you can write on those.
Nice.
And you can each have a Velcro, or you can put it together, 1 plus 1 equals 2.
Nice.
These shoes, numbers at the bottom, that's dry erase, you can write on those shoes.
What do the numbers up here?
Well, it's just really just for the learning tool where you can get, you can play with that. You can put the alphabet on the bottom of it. Then those are boots, and those are Velcro, where you can put letters and numbers on it, so you can, 1 plus 1 equals 2, or you can have a picture and then spell a picture out.
I guess that's that point guard mentality.
Yeah, you know, we always thinking, yeah. Then they call it point guard back then. You just a guy, you know, Lex, you just a guy. Oh, boy.
I did have a question. What would be your feelings with guys that are not, how would you counsel the guys that are not going to be NBA players and how they are going to probably be there for 4 years? What would be your advice to them?
Well, I tell them all, but in particular those guys, you know, a lot of times, as we talked about, I mean, we as athletes, and it's kind of sad, but we don't take education serious. We grow up as basketball players, and, you know, even parents sometimes sacrifice education for sports. I mean, that's just how it is, unfortunately. So a lot of times I just tell them, you know, at the end of the day, I've played with so many people, and I know so many people who've played this game, been in college, been pretty good, thought they would be pros, and they weren't. And to this day, they don't know what to do with themselves. So I always tell them, you know, you gotta, well, first of all, if basketball is the key, and you love basketball, you have to be in the gym, you have to be working hard at it every day. And secondly, obviously, you gotta be in school, and you gotta take this serious. Because, you know, well, I'm at Kentucky, it's a little different. We get a lot of one-and-done players, so they leave early. But we have a lot of kids who are going to be there for a while. And I just try to stress the importance of, you know, taking school serious and getting a serious major, and, you know, doing the work. Because, you know, it's only going to help you in the long run. And, you know, the decisions you make now affect the rest of your life. And, you know, I'm a perfect example of that. And so I try to stress that all the time, you know, and I'm as blunt as possible as I can be with them. And, you know, obviously you know the ones who are not going to make it. I mean, there's some obvious ones, and sometimes you have to just be bluntly honest. And that's usually how I try to deal with that.
One of the things Rod called me on that was very insightful for me is that they have a kid that is going to school there this year who graduated a year early. His ambition was to go to try to get to the pros. He's like 6'9", and he wasn't going to have the competition in high school that he felt that he needed to develop. So Rod came up with, I'm always telling him, give them insight rather than information. So Rod came up with a plan for he and his mother that he would come to school early since he was such a good student, and take the time to develop by being in school for 2 years closer to your degree. And so also you may not play early, you're 2 years closer to your degree because he already had enough courses to be out of school, and then that the parent relocated to go to be there with her son because he was a year younger than everyone else. So I thought that was finding a way to adapt to a situation that really helped where both parties won. Kid will be much further ahead, so if he isn't good enough to become a professional athlete, he's already 2 years good in school with the opportunity to decide, because his goal, I think, Rod, was he wants to be a doctor. So he would start younger, and from being a professional tennis player, most kids drop out at 14 to go play tennis and never come back. So that was, I thought, was an insightful way that they were in school, he was getting developed and trained, but obviously their goal was to try to go to the NBA and do something. He at least have had 2 years of education. One, because the genetics of his body wasn't physically ready. And then the second part was that he was smart enough to be out of high school, and yet he qualified for college. So I thought that was pretty good as finding a way for a win-win situation.
And just to touch on the shoe stuff that y'all saw, because it kind of plays into everything. I've been developing this for like 4 or 5 years now. And basically, this started with my wife teaching my kids. First of all, just a little background. My wife graduated from Syracuse, math major, 3.5, grade point average. All my kids are A students, thanks to me, but no. They're all A grade students. But my wife, from the beginning, when they were super little, we always had, well, she always had plates with numbers on it, napkins with numbers and letters on it, you know, cards with numbers on it. So we traveled. She's in the back of the car teaching them through everything. So that kind of came up, that's how I came up with the idea of doing these sneakers. And it also plays into the fact that I know, because I've been a part of it, that most athletes are not serious enough about education. And we grow up basketball. So this shoe is from infant to probably 6, 7 years old. And I trademark as saying smart is the new cool. And on the bottom of each shoe it says learning is fun. So basically it's trying to start from a young childhood and to make people feel good about learning. You know, like it's fun, it's cool, you know. You don't have to be the bad boy or whatever, it's cool to learn. So I've been working with this, like I said, for 4 or 5 years, and now I'm at the point where I'm working on distribution. I have a manufacturer, you know, I have a marketing plan. So I'm almost ready to and actually, and I didn't show y'all, but I have an MBA. Well, I'm working on an MBA licensing, so I have designs for an MBA license shoe for each team, you know, team identified. So, you know, like I said, basically I'm just trying to do this because I played basketball all my life. I've been blessed, and now this is kind of a way for me to give back. You know, I mean, obviously financially you can be rewarded, but this gives me something to, you know, even if you're thinking legacy. At the end of the day, I got something to say that I've kind of put in the community, and it's cool.
UWW
You know, we're going to get rid of different literacy programs, fund that. At the end of the day, my goal is to have this and do this, and then eventually have a basketball AAU tournament. And the sneakers called Sneechies, sneakers that teach. But I want to start a program with kids, and I want to kind of teach them how you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to go about things, you know, how you're supposed to act, you know, as an athlete, competitive-wise, you know, try to take school a little more serious. So I've been developing this, like I said, for 4 or 5 years, and I'm proud of where I've gotten it to now, and I'm looking forward to putting it out there in the public and seeing how it does. And I think I will have opportunities to do that in the near future.
I'm wondering if you could sum up for us what you see as the sort of life lessons that I learned through the study and the playing of basketball that can be applied more broadly in life.
Well, I just think dealing with people, learning how to get along with people, sacrifice, learning how to compete the right way. I mean, there's so many different learning points, and you know, obviously as I've gotten older, I see it better, I see it clearer, and like I said, I'm able to kind of influence or help these kids in that. But I think for the most part, you learn sacrifice, you learn competing the right way, how to treat people, how to get along with people, how to win together. You know, because at the end of the day, we get all these great players, but you know, you have to be a team to win. So there's great lessons in basketball, like every day. I mean, even through adversity, because you got to deal with adversity. You have to deal with people saying you suck. You know, because a lot of times these kids come and they think they're it. So now what happens that day when you see the newspaper article that says you stink? Well, you know, you have to deal with that. And so.
So we'll take Henry and then Shelley, and then we'll finish with that.
Can you talk a little bit about your sports management skills?
Well, I think just from being under someone like John Calipari, I think I've learned how to unite a team, put a team together, you know, manage time, practices, dealing, and I think Luke said something to it, even dealing with kids from different cultural backgrounds or different environments, and getting them all to play together. Those are, so that's, I mean, do you need something else from me? Or?
Yeah, well, that's
Okay, we'll take the last question from Shelley.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right, so this paper you wrote, The Homogeneous World of Sports Leadership, great paper. And it's a really interesting argument that's going to find. And I would suggest as you think about continuing to work in this area specifically, you add statistics to it, the numbers, right? Because I believe you, but a more critical listener will want to know the numbers, right? And I'd like to see like a graph that shows how, if there's been any change, and if there hasn't, more analysis and whatnot, right? Because I think the work that you're doing, the work that you've been doing recently, and the work that you all are doing is important to broaden not just the playing, but the management, and all of that, to the able people who can do that, who've got the experience on the floor, who've got the experience with each other, right? So, and yet there is, it needs to be presented in a way that people will hear it, and I think giving statistics always helps that. And maybe that's only to academics like me. I think most people in the public want to know, whoa, you know, what's the trend, what's happening with these numbers?
Well, Mr. Naismith would probably be saying, wow, because Mr. Naismith was a consummate educator, and he was in a class in Springfield, Massachusetts, where he was asked to create a winter sport. That's how the game of basketball emerged. And he was a physical education major at Springfield College. And he was into health and physical education in the body and teaching. And so he came up with this basketball concept in the first 12 rules. I can give a lecture on it, but I don't want to get into all that. But Naismith had a vision that has exploded all over the world. And now this little shoe that Rod has, he probably hasn't made the connection, but this is the connection to Naismith. Because Naismith was a teacher, and he wanted to use the game of basketball to help young people understand the mind, body, and spirit, which was the theme of the YMCA movement, because Springfield College was a college to train YMCA professionals, and the YMCA movement was emerging around the world. And so this mind, body, and spirit concept in his mind in 1891 could be taught through physical activity emerging in basketball. And here comes Strickland now with a shoe with the same concept, and he's a basketball player. And so there is this connection, and if you pay me, I'll write this book.
So at this point, Rod, if you want to give us any closing, concluding remarks, you can do so.
First of all, again, I just want to thank everybody for being here. Like I said, I'm truly blessed and honored to be here. And what I would just say at the end is that I've been through a long journey. You know, it's been rough, you know, but I finally got it, and I understood the importance of getting my academics. And I went through the struggle, and I've come to this, and I'm proud of that. And I've learned a lot. You know, I've learned a lot through the process. I've learned a lot being a basketball coach, dealing with young kids. I've learned a lot in basketball, dealing with adults, dealing with media, just in all walks. So, you know, I just want to keep getting better. I think this is a great opportunity for me to move on and do bigger and better things. You know, having a degree, you know, helps me to do bigger things in college basketball. My goal is to become a college head coach, and you know, without a degree, you can't do that. But just in general, forget sports or anything else. I have kids, you know, that are great students, and so for them to see their father, you know, at 20 years old, to finally get his degree, I think, you know, that shows them something, and lets them know that, you know, I'm still, you know, I'm still living. I'm still trying to get better and better, and I think that gives a great example to them, and to the students that I coach, and to the kids that I want to touch with this shoe. So that's it.
And one final thing, Dr. Lance, is there's a spiritual connection involved in that. But a couple of years ago, I discovered that a man that I've been working very closely with in New York, G2YUC, had a grandson named Jakari Johnson, who was emerging as a top high school basketball player. And so I asked Rod, did he know about it to validate it, because my friend was bragging about his grandson. And, you know, Chicago is the center of basketball, not New York. And of course, we were having great debate about this. And so Rod verified that not only did he know Jakari Johnson, but that his wife and Mr. Wausi's daughter were friends on the AAU circuit with the Strickland kids and Jakari Johnson. Well, to make a long story short, Rod has a special job because Jakari Johnson now is potentially a one and done or maybe two and done ball player at the University of Kentucky this fall. And his grandfather passed away and left me somewhat in charge of making sure Mr. Strickland takes care of his grandson in Kentucky. So that's the spiritual nature of this.
I got it.
You got it?
Okay. Excellent. So at this point, Mr. Strickland, we're going to ask you to step out briefly, and the executive session will begin. And as soon as we conclude, we'll ask you to come back. Yeah. On behalf of the committee, we'd like to congratulate you and let you know that the committee has unanimously recommended you for graduation based upon the written and oral materials presented with no additional requirements.
Thank you.
I want to thank, this kind of was, you know, spirit. I was sitting up and I said, you know, Ron can't be in the room by himself for this kind of occasion. And so I called Mr. Bryant, who's someone I always admired in my life, and my longtime buddy here, Dennis Boston. We grew up together. He's been in basketball all of his life. And Mr. Bolin, I've known since I was a young man also. And I knew he was in academics. As a matter of fact, he worked in this area for many, many years, right around the corner at the Elliott Downey Youth Center before he became a professor. And then Tom, who's someone I always looked up to, and the leader of the Fellowship of ex-ball players. So I just want to thank you all for coming in. Muriel Bala here, who was Rod's first consultant, and we won't talk about that, but she gave Rod hell. Okay, and but Rod said to me just yesterday, I need to thank her, and because Muriel was a great student in the UWW. Here's a young lady who came out of high school, had a full scholarship at University of Chicago, and lasted a year. And went on to work for a corporation, and then came back to get a degree. So she's a great example in another arena. So I want to thank Muriel and everybody, my good friend Mr. English here. And so congratulations, Ron.
Thank you, Dr. Conrad. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Maybe that's your first applause as an academic, huh?
Yeah, without a doubt.
I bet it's not the last, though.
No, I hope not.
Yeah,
And,
graduate school next, right?
Yeah, yeah. But I didn't thank John because I've been hearing about John Lucas. He's a legend. I mean, he's just, his name resonates throughout the world in athletics and many other areas. And for him to be a part and get to know him personally has been very rewarding. He's a very brilliant man. And to put up with me and working with Rob the last couple of years, it's really been, we should take, we could have made a lot of money taking some of our conversations.
I'd like to thank you all because the world of basketball got better today. Because we got a good young coach. And I think he has a great opportunity to really impact young kids' lives. And I don't think people really realize how important the coach is. Getting a bad coach is like getting a bad parent. Because coaches become role models. And you know, if you've ever been in sports, you hang on to whatever the coach says. And once your coach isn't who you thought he was, it's different. So, you know, today I think basketball got better, especially at the level where he is. Because they got a guy that's got some great insight.
Tell
Thank you.
Calipari that he owes me some money, man.
That's why I called him right away. That's my first phone call.
Thank you, Jay.